Have you ever noticed how one sentence can ruin your entire day? Someone says that you're too quiet, and suddenly you're not just quiet anymore, you're weird, boring, forgettable. Someone says you've changed, and now you're replaying every version of yourself like security footage, trying to figure out which version of you they liked best. Someone doesn't text back, and suddenly your brain becomes a courtroom. You're the defendant, their silence is the evidence, and your anxiety is the judge. But here's the question that nobody asks. What if the life you're living right now isn't actually yours? What if your personality, your dreams, your clothes, your posts, silence, your fake laughs, your fear of trying, and your fear of being seen? What if all of it is just a house built inside someone else's opinion? And the worst part? You don't even remember handing them the keys. This video is about the invisible prison that most people live in. Not a prison that's made of walls, but a prison that's made of what other people might think. And once you see it, you'll notice it everywhere. You'll see why people hesitate before speaking, why you delete the posts, why you pretend not to care, why you laugh at jokes that hurt you, why you act smaller around certain people, and why you feel exhausted even when nothing happens. Because living for other people's approval is like running a race where the finish line is constantly moving. And the cruel part is, even when you finally become what they wanted, they might not even clap. There's a story about a boy who grew up in a house full of mirrors. Not real mirrors, but people mirrors. His father's disappointment, his teacher's expectations, his mother's worry, his friends' jokes. Everywhere that he looked, someone was reflecting back a version of him. You're smart, don't waste it. You're not athletic. You're too sensitive, you're lazy, you're dramatic, you're the funny one, you're not the type of person who does that. And slowly, without realizing it, he stopped asking, who am I? And he started asking, who do they need me to be so that they don't leave? So he became very easy to like. He became agreeable, low maintenance. He became the person who said it's fine when he wasn't fine. He became the person who had opinions in his head but not out loud. He became a museum. Not a person, but a museum. Every room filled with things other people approved of. And every forbidden dream locked in the basement. Maybe you know that feeling. Maybe you've been living with an invisible audience inside of your head. You wake up and before you even choose what you wear, you imagine how it will look to other people. You don't say the truth because it might make things awkward. You don't chase the dream because what if you fail publicly? And public failure feels so much worse than private misery. So you choose private misery, because at least nobody can laugh at that. But here's the trap. When you avoid being judged, you don't become free. You just become invisible. And invisibility is not peace. It's a slow kind of sadness. The kind where nobody attacks you, but nobody truly knows you either. And this is where it gets dangerous, because the opinions you fear the most usually don't come from strangers. They come from people that you once wanted love from. A parent, a friend group, an ex, a teacher, someone that you once admired. Somebody that made you feel small once, and now a tiny version of them lives in your head, commenting on everything that you do. You try something and their voice whispers, that's cringe. You set a boundary and their voice says, that's selfish. You dream bigger and their voice says, who do you think you are? And that question, who do you think you are, has killed more dreams than failure ever has. Because failure only says, try again. Shame says, don't even try. Imagine a bird born inside a cage. At first, the cage feels like home. The bars are normal, the limits are normal, the tiny circle it flies in feels like the whole entire sky. And then one day, someone opens the door. But the bird doesn't leave. Not because it can't, but because the freedom feels suspicious when you've been trained to fear open spaces. That's what other people's opinions do. They don't just trap you. They teach you to call the trap being realistic. They teach you to call fear maturity. They teach you to call self-abandonment being nice. They teach you to call a cage your personality. And years later, even when nobody is stopping you anymore, you stop yourself. There was a man named Elias, and Elias had 2 funerals. The first one happened when he died, and the second one happened when he was 17. At 17, Elias wanted to be a musician. Not famous or rich, he just loved the way that music sounds. He loved the way that a song could take a feeling too big for the body and give it somewhere to go. So he wrote songs in secret, in notebooks, on napkins, and in the Note app at 2 a.m. on his phone. Then one day his older cousin found one, read it out loud, laughed, called it dramatic, called it embarrassing, called it deep for no reason. And everyone laughed along. Not for too long, maybe 30 seconds, but 30 seconds can become 30 years if it hits the right wound. So Elias smiled, snatched the notebook back, said I was just messing around. And that night he put the notebook in a drawer, then another drawer, and then a box, and then a closet, then somewhere so far inside of him that he stopped looking. Years passed. He got a normal job, a normal apartment, normal conversations, normal weekends and friends. People liked him. People respected him. But every time that he heard someone singing on stage, something inside him stood up like a ghost and whispered, "That was supposed to be us." That's the scariest part about living inside of someone else's opinion. You can survive it, you can build a whole life there, you can pay bills there and smile there, you can become successful there. But somewhere inside of you, there will always be a version of you buried alive. And every now and then, when the room gets quiet, you'll hear it knocking. So what do? How do you escape a prison that doesn't have walls? Well, you start by asking one brutal question. Who would I be if I wasn't trying to be acceptable? Not perfect, not impressive, not understood, but acceptable. Because most people aren't choosing happiness or chasing happiness. They're chasing permission. Permission to speak, to create, to leave, to change, to want more, to be different than the person everyone got comfortable with. But at some point you have to realize, nobody is coming to hand you a certificate that says you may now become yourself. There's no graduation ceremony for self-respect. There's no email that says, "Congratulations, everyone finally understands you." You just have to begin, awkwardly and imperfectly, with shaking hands with a racing heart, with people misunderstanding you, with some people leaving. Because becoming yourself will disappoint the people who benefited from you being easy to control. And yes, it will hurt. It will hurt when people don't clap, when they call you different, when they say, "I like the old you better." But sometimes what they call the old you was just the quieter you. The scared you. The you who swallowed every truth so nobody would choke on it. The you who made yourself digestible. But you are not here to be easy for everyone to understand. You're not a product on a shelf. You're not a performance review or a comment section. You are a living person, which means you're allowed to change. Allowed to be seen, to be disliked, allowed to be misunderstood, allowed to walk out of the room where they decided who you were. Years later, Elias found the old notebook. The pages were yellow, the handwriting looked like it had belonged to a stranger, and he sat on the floor and read the songs that he had buried. And at first he laughed, not because they were bad, but because they were alive. They were messy, honest, emotional, too much, brutal, everything that he had spent years trying not to be. And then he cried because he realized something. He hadn't been embarrassed of the songs, he had been embarrassed of being real. That night, he picked up a guitar for the first time in 20 years. His fingers were stiff, his voice cracked, and the song wasn't good. Not yet, but it was his. And sometimes, taking the first step back to yourself doesn't feel powerful. It feels small and clumsy. It feels like singing quietly in a room where no one's listening. But that's how you know it's real. Because for once, you're not performing, you're returning. So maybe today you don't need to become a whole new person. Maybe you just need to stop abandoning the person who's been waiting for you. Post the video, wear the outfit, say the thing, start over, leave the group chat, tell the truth, make that art. Because an opinion is not a home. It's weather. It passes. So you can let people have their opinions. And you were never meant to build your life inside of something that changes every time the wind blows. You don't have to hate people for judging you. You don't have to prove them wrong. You don't have to make them understand. You just have to stop using their opinion as a blueprint for your soul. Because one day your life will flash before your eyes. And the saddest thing would not be seeing your failures. It would be seeing all the moments you betrayed yourself just to be liked by people who were barely paying attention. So ask yourself, what part of me did I bury to be accepted? And what would happen if I brought it back? Not all at once, just one honest choice at a time. Because the real you isn't gone, it's just waiting on the other side of the opinion that you've been living in. And maybe today's that day, so you can finally come home.